Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Apalachicola Chattahoochee Flint River Basin Drought Assessment webinar for the month of June. My name's Rachel McGuire, and I'm with the Auburn University Water Resources Center located in Auburn, Alabama. If you're new to the webinar, or if you're new to our 2020 format of WebEx, just some housekeeping. We'll have time for comments, questions, or discussion at the end of the webinar, so please hold your questions until the end. You can also use the question box on the GoToMeeting tool panel. You can type in your question, or you can digitally raise your hand by pushing the hand icon on that same tool panel. And then also a reminder to my speakers, just let me know when you're ready for your next slide. And our speakers today will be David Zierden of the Florida Climate Center at Florida State University, speaking to us about our current drought status and our seasonal forecasts and outlooks. Tom Littlepage from the Alabama Office of Water Resources will give input from the state of Alabama. Paul Anghorn from the USGS South Atlantic Water Science Center will speak to us about our current stream flows and groundwater conditions in the ACF. And we also have Troy Ephraim of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Mobile District, who will be speaking with us about our ACF reservoir conditions. Lastly, we'll have Jeff Grover of the Southeast River Forecast Center speaking with us about our stream flow forecast for the ACF. And with that, I will hand it over to our first speaker, David. Let me know when you're ready.
I'm sorry, this is David. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, David.
I just had to go tell my family to shut down all their Wi-Fi because you were breaking up on me. So I think I'm back, and just let me know or type something in the chat if I'm breaking up on you.
Okay, no problem. My family was misbehaving too, just my dogs this time. It's all ready for you, David.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and begin this month's seminar with something that's in the news right now. We're currently experiencing a major Saharan dust event out over the main development region of the Atlantic and the Caribbean. While these are fairly common and occur every year, this one is much more intense and widespread than normal, so it's getting a lot of airplay. It's important because these Saharan dust events, they're known to inhibit tropical cyclone formation in the affected areas. And it's not necessarily the dust particles themselves, but it's a layer of a very dry and very warm air that really stabilizes the entire atmosphere and inhibits convection. So that's good news for now, as it'll keep activity in the Atlantic down for as long as the dust is, the event is going on. Over on the bottom right is like a 5-day forecast where the yellows and oranges are the greatest concentration of these dust particles. And you see they're making their way across the entire Atlantic and Caribbean, and even around the edge of this subtropical high up into the northern Gulf Coast and Texas area by this weekend. So most of us will experience some hazy conditions from this. On the next slide, as I said, it inhibits tropical convection, but we do have a tropical storm Dolly that formed well north of the dust layer earlier this morning. So we have just a little bit of activity in the Atlantic. Really, it's not going to affect any land to speak of. A different story over in the Eastern Pacific, where there's really 3 different areas of activity with a good chance of developing further. So while the Atlantic is going to be quiet for the time being, the Pacific looks like it's getting its act together. So on the next slide, we'll start talking about drought, why we're here today. What I have here is US Drought Monitor month ago, our last webinar, where we saw that the Florida Panhandle, much of the Western Panhandle was, and the lower ACF were classified as moderate drought. Well, we've had Tropical Storm Cristobal and some other tropical rainfall since then, which has pretty much alleviated all the drought in the state of Florida. And the rest of the ACF basin remains drought-free. So good news there. The Florida summer rainy season has kicked in earnest, and we look to be pretty well set for the next few months. On the next slide, we'll start taking a look at current conditions. And during the summer months, I find that this lawn and garden moisture index from the University of Alabama, Huntsville, very useful in showing where quickly drying conditions are occurring. And the lawn and garden moisture index shows how moist the peninsula of Florida is, where we've been getting nearly daily rainfall. However, up through middle Georgia and northern Alabama, they haven't seen a lot of rain in the last couple weeks. So these areas are starting to dry pretty quickly, and this index picks that up very well. On the next slide, we'll just start taking a look at recent rainfall, and I think we'll be looking at accumulations over the past week or 7 days. I have to confess, I put these slides together early this morning before the National Weather Service updated this product, so it doesn't include yesterday's rainfall, but it tells the story we want to show. Over the last 7 days, very little rainfall in the lower ACF, some scattered rainfall in the middle and upper ACF in northern and middle Alabama and Georgia, but amounts generally less than an inch, only more than that in very isolated areas. You can also see the plentiful rainfall over most of the Florida Peninsula. On the next slide, we'll take a look further back at the last 30 days of rainfall accumulation. And it kind of shows the story where we've had heavier amounts across the Florida Panhandle and the lower ACF, which again alleviated the drought there. Much of the state of Florida with 10 to 15 inches over the last 30 days. So again, shows how robust the summer rainy season has kicked in. As we'd expect climatologically, once you get into inland Alabama and Georgia, much less rain, much more scattered. There you see middle Georgia with only an inch and a half or so of rain over the last 30 days. A little more rainfall in Alabama, but pretty much what we typically expect this time of year climatologically. On the next slide, we'll take a look even further back at the last 90 days. And instead of rainfall totals, this is departures from normal. And this really shows the story at the 90-day time frame. Almost the entire southeast and certainly the ACF basin is either normal or above normal rainfall over the last 3 months. So now let's go ahead and start looking ahead at what we can expect in the next week or so. This is the 7-day quantitative precipitation forecast from the National Weather Service. And you see more of the same that we'd expect climatologically, scattered amounts around the southeast, but generally in the 1.5 inch range or less is what we're expecting over the next 7 days. On the next slide, we'll start taking a look further ahead and what the Pacific Ocean is doing. And as we talked about last month, the cold water from a downwelling Kelvin wave has reached the surface in the central and eastern Pacific. And you can see that with the sea surface temperature anomaly map on the top, where a pretty well-defined and extensive cold tongue has developed along the equator in the central and eastern Pacific Ocean. So kind of indicative, looks a lot like what you'd expect in a La Nina event. The bottom graph shows the Nino 3.4 index, where it did drop below that negative half degree threshold, and has been around that area for the past several weeks. One word of caution is that in order to be an official warm or cold event, either El Nino or La Nina, we have to have temperatures exceeding that threshold for 5 consecutive months. And right now, the thinking is that this event might not last that long, so it might never really reach La Nina criteria. And that'll be important in just a minute. So we'll go ahead to the next slide, and this will show, I got this from the Climate Prediction Center, and this shows an equatorial cross section and the ocean temperature anomalies at depth across the entire Pacific Ocean. And you can see starting at the top graph, you can see as this downwelling Kelvin wave progressed eastward across the Pacific to where over on the right, it shows the current anomalies at depth are confined to the eastern Pacific alone for the most part. So this Kelvin wave has pretty much run its course, and we have not seen a lot of disturbances in the trade winds that would trigger a reinforcing Kelvin wave. So again, that's going into the thought process that this might be a short-lived event and not reach the criteria. And on the next slide, we'll take a look at what that means. This will be the official forecast from IRI and the Climate Prediction Center. And it shows as we get later into the summer, the chances of either neutral or La Nina are close to identical. But also a takeaway is at no time during the coming summer or fall do they show a probability greater than 45% or so. So again, that shows that uncertainty that this might never be a fully developed event. And over on the right is the usual model plume from the different prediction models. They're clustered right around that negative half degree threshold, as you see, but there's quite a spread. So again, this is another source of uncertainty for going forward. So on the next slide, with this in mind, we'll take a look at the seasonal outlook from the Climate Prediction Center. Very similar to last month. The next 3 months, they show increased likelihood of above normal temperatures for most of the United States, very consistent with recent trends over the last 10 or more years. On the right is the precipitation forecast, and just like last month, they keep showing an increased chance of above normal rainfall for the entire Southeast. So again, that's good news for drought and for the ACF basin. On the next slide, I think we'll finish up with the seasonal drought outlook. Oh no, just a review. We showed this last webinar. This is the seasonal hurricane forecast. The forecast is for an active season. It's one of the stronger forecasts since 2013, and where we see a 60% chance of above normal tropical activity. And over on the right, you see the estimated number of named storms and hurricanes and major hurricanes. So on the next slide, not a lot of information here, but it is the seasonal drought outlook. Currently, there's only one small spot of drought remaining near the Mobile, Alabama area. And of course, given the summer rainy season, it's forecast that drought removal will be likely. So on the last slide, we'll go ahead and summarize what we just went over. We have the current Saharan Air Layer event going on, and it's very good likelihood to suppress tropical development in the near future. The ACF Basin and most all of the Southeast is currently drought-free. Rainfall's been above normal across the Florida Panhandle over the last 30 days, drier and more scattered over inland Georgia and Alabama. And at 90 days, rainfall has generally been normal to above normal over the entire area. The 7-day forecast, kind of more typical weather and scattered showers. The Pacific Ocean is quickly transitioned, as we saw last webinar, to cooler than normal. However, chances for La Nina still remain less than 50%, given the questions about its longevity. NOAA's seasonal hurricane forecast strongly favors above normal activity. The seasonal outlooks favor higher chances for warm temperatures and above normal rainfall across the southeastern United States. And the ACF is likely to remain drought-free, even if but we should see the usual seasonal lowering of flows and such, just due to the seasonality of our rainfall and summer growing season.
Thank you, David. Now we'll hear from Tom Littlepage about the state of Alabama input. Tom, are you on the line ready?
I am on the line. Can y'all hear me okay?
Right. Sure can.
Yeah, go ahead to the next slide. David did a good job sort of capturing the overall perspective of conditions, and I show this slide just to highlight the area of D1 down in Mobile and Baldwin counties. That's related to the lingering long-term effects of conditions down there. As y'all are well aware, the effects of Tropical Storm Cristobal really dampened or eliminated drought in all but those long-term indicators. So we'll see some improvement with that. Next slide. So we had not held a meeting of our monitoring and impact group since last December. So we held one last week, and as a result of that, we modified our drought, the state drought declaration, to capture those areas of dryness in the northwestern part of the state, and again reflect the long-term drought conditions that still linger a little bit in Mobile and Baldwin counties down in the southwestern part of the state. And I think on this week's drought monitor map, we'll see those, again, the D1 being removed with still some advisory levels. Okay, next slide. So we're continuing to monitor conditions, and I just remind everybody that we have a interactive map, a list that we put out here where we track when we get notified of drought related issues or impacts around the state. Some of you may recall that we had received a fire advisory earlier this year that has since been rescinded by the Alabama Forestry Commission. So we are not showing any drought related impacts as of the current time. Okay, next slide. So quick and dirty summary is we see those areas. We are basically drought free except for those areas in the northwest and southwestern portions of the state. As David so eloquently put out there, we're going to see our typical pattern. The big unknown is what tropical activity may brew in the Gulf that would impact us, and currently right now it doesn't look like that's going to affect us in the short term. But we're going to continue to monitor conditions and be happy to report those in any future meetings. Next slide, last slide. And then as a way to continue this effort to assess conditions, we've set up the next meeting of our state monitoring and impact group for the last week of July. And anybody's welcome to participate in that if you would like. Thank you, that's all I got.
Thanks, Tom. Now we'll hear from Paul Ankhorn of USGS with our Streamflow and groundwater conditions. Are you on the line ready, Paul?
I am. Rachel, you hear me okay?
Sure can.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. We'll begin, as we usually do, with looking at our normal or real-time conditions here. So graphic on the right, the map there is showing real-time stream flow conditions for the southeast. And you can see from the green pixels there that for the most part, the whole southeast is pretty much in normal conditions. And then extending up into North Carolina, you see a gradual higher flows, and some stations there are showing much above normal. But looking at the ACF, again, majority of the stations are currently ranked as normal, and with a few stations showing much below normal, but that's likely due to regulation. So as a whole, we're looking pretty good in real time. And look at the next slide. We'll look at these are below normal 7-day average stream flows. So our current conditions as of this morning show ACF to be pretty much, as the other speakers have noted, hydrologically at least speaking, drought free. Pretty much no change since the last webinar, although that one spot that was showing up for quite a few of our sessions there in the panhandle of Florida has finally moved back into the normal conditions as a result of the tropical storm Cristobal. So that's good news for those folks. Look at the next slide. We shall start looking at 28-day average flows. So these are flows into Lake Lanier. So the 28-day average flow is shown by the black line there, and each day is then ranked against historical daily values. So for Chattahoochee River and Cornelia, we've pretty much hovered right on the 75th percentile, following the trend that we typically see for this time of year. And then slightly higher flow, Chestatee River at Dahlonega, where 28-day average flows are ranking currently at above normal. And next slide. So these are flows below Lanier. So Chattahoochee River at Atlanta is currently ranked at above normal. And the same story there further downstream at Whitesburg. 28-day average flow is above normal. Next slide, we shall move further downstream to West Point and Columbus, where conditions there for the 28-day average flow are both ranking within the normal range. All right, next slide. We'll look here at the Flint River Basin. So starting most upstream, Flint River at Griffin. We just crossed right into the 75th, 76th percentile. And then Flint River, Carsonville is just below the 75th percentile, ranking at normal flow conditions. All right, next slide. Look, this is Albany and Bainbridge, and both stations there, the 28-day average flow is currently in normal conditions. Next slide. That's the Apalachicola River at Chattahoochee, and 28-day average flow there is right around the 50th percentile, so well into normal conditions. So good news as far as flow goes for the ACF. We'll begin to look now at, on the next slide, at groundwater conditions. So currently on the right, this is our real-time groundwater well network here, at least in Georgia. And conditions, at least elevations, are running from a majority of stations in the normal range, a few stations showing above normal, and conversely much below normal. So a mixed bag there as far as well conditions go. We'll look at our two circled stations, which are our reference sites that we look at each month. And the next slide will show Miller County, where we're trending down, but that's to be expected for this time of year. So the well elevation there is currently ranked as normal. And then the next slide will show Doherty County, where we typically see a little more fluctuation there. We have had conditions for the month of June as high as much above normal, but currently now we're seeing elevation in the normal range. So Good sign for groundwater there at least. All right, the next slide, I'll just give a quick summary. So real-time stream flow in the ACF basin currently range from high to much below normal. According to the 7-day average stream flow, there's no portion of the ACF basin that is currently ranked hydrologically drought related. The 28-day average stream flow for the Chattahoochee River is currently ranking from above normal to the normal range. And for the Flint River, we're looking at conditions above normal to normal range for the 28-day average. And then finally, as I just showed, real-time groundwater levels across the ACF range from much above normal to much below normal, with majority of the stations showing to be in the normal range. All right, Rachel, that concludes it. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And now we'll hear from Troy Ephraim about our ACF reservoir conditions. Are you on the line and ready, Troy? Troy, we still can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect.
There we go.
All right, starting at Buford. The midnight pool elevation there was 1071.49, and our 10-day forecast is 1071.32. And right now we're just a little bit above guide curve there, and we expect to stay there over the next couple of weeks. Next slide. At West Point, the midnight pool elevation 635.02, and our 10-day forecast 635.46. And right now we're operating a little bit above guide curve there as well. We wanted to store a little bit with our upcoming Water F. George drawdown for riprap repairs at the dam, and we're anticipating to stay there over the next 5 weeks as well. Next slide. At Water F. George, the midnight pool elevation 188.92, and our 10-day forecast 188.99. And right now we're hovering right at about our historical median area of where we are for the pool elevation. Next slide. Jim Woodruff, the midnight pool elevation 77.04, and our 10-day forecast 76.92. And same thing, we're just operating to maintain those minimum flows downstream from Woodruff. Next slide. The ACF Basin composite storage. Right now we're in zone 1, and we plan to stay there over the next 5 weeks. And for the summary, our project inflows right now, they're looking pretty normal. Lake Lanier and West Point are operating above guide curve with the anticipated drawdown at Water F. George, which is operating in zone 1. We expect for our projects to approach or stay just a little bit above guide curve over the next 5 weeks. And the ACF system conservation storage is in zone 1 and is forecasted to stay there over the next few weeks.
Thank you, Troy. And we will now hear from Jeff Dober with our Streamflow forecast. Are you ready, Jeff?
I am here. Thank you, Rachel. So our 1 month forecast calls for above normal conditions. And when I say above normal, as Paul pointed out, right now the streamflow percentiles are running right around that 60 to 80 percentile. And then, naturally the trend is as we go into the summer, volumetrically stream flows decrease, right? So that normal slowly decreases as well. And so what we think is we're going to be right along that slow decline on the stream flows between 60 and 80 percentile. So even though stream flows will decline, we'll probably be real close during the month, tracking right in that 60 to 80 percentile as far as the 1 month. And this is based on just some of the rainfall forecasts. And then, we're running a little bit above guide curve, as Troy pointed out. So we'll be right there. The good thing is that very low chances of below normal. And that also falls in line with our 3-month forecast. If we go to the next slide. Now we're going from July. This actually encompasses July, August, and September. So now we're into the tropical season as well. But our Streamflow pie charts here showing the probability in general across the ACF, we see more or less a 2 out of 5 chance of above normal, a 2 out of 5 chance near normal, and about a 1 out of 5 chance of below normal. So again, here, that same trend will probably be in that 60 to 80th percentile of stream flows for the entire ACF basin is what we're thinking. And this is, again, based on the idea that basically we hedged a little bit higher due to the fact that, as Dave pointed out, some of our extended Climate Prediction Center outlooks are for above normal chances of rainfall through that period, as well as a more than active potential of tropical systems in the Atlantic, which may have an effect. So that is more or less the 3-month stream flow forecast. So again, in summary, we'll be right around that normal, near to above normal range, that 60th to 80th percentile, I think, through most of the summer and into early fall as far as stream flows. So that's all I had as far as the river forecasts.
Thank you, Jeff. And now I'd like to open it up to any questions, comments, or discussion that any of our attendees may have for our speakers. You can use the question box in the tool panel, or you can also use the raise your hand function. Cindy, it looks like you had your hand raised. I'm trying to see if I can unmute you.
Hey, Rachel, it's Cindy.
Hey, I can hear you.
Sorry, I was just whenever you were calling on the core, I was waiting to see if Troy was online. I couldn't tell if he was online or not, so I had just raised my hand then. But,
oh, okay.
so yeah, so no, everything looks fine.
All right, and it looks like I do have one other hand raised. I'm sorry, I may mispronounce your name. Liang? I'm trying to connect you to audio right now. You have a question?
Hello.
Hi, I can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. This is Lian. I have a quick question for Troy regarding the WF George drawdown back in May. I may missed it. Was it due to a maintenance?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Were you asking, was it for, you said an amendment?
Yeah. In one of the slides that you show the WF George elevation.
Mm-hmm.
So in the May, I think there's a drawdown, right? The elevation is pretty low.
Oh, yeah. In
Yeah.
May, that was just the natural kind of flow of the river. That was not done on purpose for any repairs, or that was just we had to release some water to maintain downstream minimum flow requirements that we're required to have on the Apalachicola River.
Okay, because I think I may hear that you mentioned maintenance or repair, so I wonder if I missed anything there.
Oh, no, ma'am. The drawdown is coming up over the next month or two.
Due to the maintenance, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's planned activity.
Yes.
Oh, all right. Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Troy. Do we have any other questions from any of our attendees? I'm not seeing any, so we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you once again to all of our speakers today. And our next webinar will be Tuesday, July 28th, same time, 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central. There will be video recording available of this webinar that will be posted to YouTube and shared in the post-webinar email newsletters that I send out. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me by phone or email. My information's displayed currently. And thank you for joining today. Everyone have a good one.
Thank you, Rachel.